So I think a good way to get into this might be this email that we got from a /FILMCAST listener. Did you guys read this thing I sent you yesterday?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So this email was pretty powerful. We got this email from, I want to say, Josh. I don't know what his name is, but maybe he doesn't want me to share it anyway. Please let us know where you're from and what your name is, though, when you write in. So Josh writes in about why he loved Arrival so much. Quote, in 2008, my best friend from childhood died in a horrible car accident at the age of 23, 10 days before his son was born. At the time, tensions were high between myself and his new widow for reasons I won't get into, but I actually did not go to their gender announcement party. I can still remember walking into his parents' house the morning I got the call and seeing a picture of a pizza that had "It's a Boy" spelled out in pepperoni on it. 3 years later, my little brother took his own life at age 25. He struggled with alcoholism throughout adulthood and ultimately lost the battle. The photo of all three of us together at my sister's birthday party some time ago is a painful reminder that I'm the only living person left in it. My mother would later admit to me that it was not the first child she had lost. She had a stillborn between my brother and I, but never had the heart to tell me. Obviously, these losses on their own would be enough to break anyone, but I moved forward. I asked life's big questions and found atheism made the most sense to me. Realizing that our lives are finite, time instantly became more valuable to me. I decided that I had been wasting my life and wanted to be a father that my best friend and brother never got to be. My son was born December 2012. We gave him 2 middle names as a tribute to my brother and friend. Less than a year later, his mother and I separated. It didn't bother me to get divorced because we both knew it was the right decision, to be honest, but the losses were a strain on both of us. What bothered me was the time I would lose out with my son. Even with equal split, I couldn't help but think I'm being robbed of half his life. Which brings me to Arrival. People continue to have children knowing full well that child will one day die. To me, that's why this film is so beautiful and simultaneously heartbreaking. It asks the question, is life worth living when you know that it ends? It then answers that question with a resounding yes, as Amy Adams' character, Louise, chooses to move forward with getting pregnant even though she knows the sadness that lies ahead. She does this because the love and joy is stronger than that sadness. The old, it's better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all messaging taken to the extreme. I would take painful living over painless nothingness 10 times out of 10 times. This movie left me an emotional wreck. When I got home, I hugged my son tighter than I ever have before. Not just for me, but for the uncle and friend that he'll never know. I felt the need to write in and share my response so that listeners may get an opportunity to appreciate the value of time itself while they still have people in their lives to spend it with. This is the power of cinema, using an art form not just to entertain, but to cause a person to reflect on their own existence and give them an experience they will hold with them, maybe forever. Thanks to all of you for the joy you bring me each week. And Jeff, hold that kiddo tight. End quote. So, very, very powerful letter. It's gotten me a little choked up too, just reading it. The question this movie asks at the end is, if you could see time, right? If you could perceive the future and see all the horrors that come from it, would you still do things the same way, right? Would you still live life the same way? And knowing that the tragedy that might envelop you, is a certainty. I feel like the movie argues the answer is yes, right?
Yeah.
That it is worth it. In that way, it reminds me a little bit of the ending of Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, where tragedy is happening, but hey, there is still something worth it about these experiences that we have. I had a question for you guys, though, which I'm sure there's a very easy answer for this, and I feel like Jeff Cannata is going to explain this to me real well, and I'm taking that totally non-sarcastically, but I felt like there were almost two separate themes kind of grafted onto each other in this movie, and I wasn't entirely sure what the connection between them was. And I have some vague sense of it, but maybe you guys can help me, right? Because on the one hand, you have this sci-fi movie about talking with aliens and how these aliens are kind of testing us in a way, or they're trying to help humanity in a way. And the importance of patience and understanding and empathy, right? And not reaching for a weapon when you can reach for an olive branch instead. And that stuff is all very important and powerful. But then it seems like there's this kind of separate point about living life and tragedy and even knowing the ending still being worth love and life and all that stuff being worth it still. And I wasn't 100% sure how these connected. Jeff Cannata, do you have any thoughts on how they connected? Do you feel like the themes are connected? Should they be connected?
I 100%. I think they're connected. I think that it's important to note that the movie pivots around the notion of language, right? About communication, about listening. Here are aliens who literally came down to Earth, sat there, showed up, and waited. And like, we'll show up at a very specific time, and we'll sit here and we'll wait. It's in your hands, humans. What do you want to do? Like, they didn't try to start the conversation. They just sat there and waited, and they wanted to see what humans would do with that opportunity, right? And that's life. That's what are you going to do with that opportunity? I think this notion that you have all of the information. They literally were coming to us for help, right? They say we're going to need we're going to need
your help in 3,000 years. Yeah, whatever that means. Like, I don't think do we have any sense of what that means?
Yeah, and I think that
really.
That connection level that she finds, like, she ultimately comes to the point that her connection with her daughter, those moments of joy. I'm going to have a hard time talking about this. Sorry. Sorry. This was the first movie that my wife and I have gone out of the house to watch together since we've had our kid. And you may understand Inception a little better once you have kids, but this movie probably added to that list. Like, the sound. Sorry. The sound of the baby in this movie. It was the first. Sorry.
It's okay. You don't need to apologize. Okay. You don't need to apologize, Jeff.
It was the first time that my wife and I had been away from our kid. Like, her mom came over and was taking care of him, so we could go see this movie together. And we were there sitting, missing him, and just like the sound of that child, like the cooing of the baby in the movie sounded like Jack, right? So the message of, like, those moments, however fleeting, are worth it. Sorry, you guys can go. I'm gonna have a hard time talking about this.
No, it's all good. It's all good, Jeff.
It hit me in a very powerful way, and I think that's what this movie has to say is, those moments we have. Like, I've brought up on the show many times this thing that has really resonated with me, that John Barton says in his Talking Shakespeare videos, that all art is wrestling with this notion of time. Like, that's what all art is trying to deal with is the fact that we as humans experience time. And I think that it's very profoundly addressed in this movie that, we can't wrap our heads around how stuff begins and ends, right? There's beginnings and there's endings, and the endings are coming, and we try to put it out of our head that endings happen, but the moments in between, the bright spots, are worth enduring the endings. And that's kind of this level of communication. Like, it's all about relating to your fellow man, relating to your family. Like, connecting is important, and connecting is what adds vibrancy to those little moments.
Devindra, any thoughts on the two themes at the end? Like, how did you conceive of them? Or
it's I think the way you're putting it, Jeff, makes a lot of sense.
I knew Jeff would deliver on this. I was like, Jeff is going to deliver on an explanation on this.
Yeah, for me too. It's also the idea that I was also trying to, like, bring these two themes together. And Amy Adams' character says something towards the end of the film about how once she started to learn the alien language, which, I guess, just by learning it, right, you have a conception, you start to have these flashbacks or flash forwards, you can start to see the skips in time, and you can start to just, I guess, understand time in different ways. And first of all, I found that fascinating as to like a path towards peace, right? Because
Right.
for all the discussions and everything we can have with each other, if you truly understood the lasting impact of what these discussions mean in the grand scale of time, right? Your petty squabbles are meaningless, and I think that's partially it as well. When it comes to,
I really like that, Devindra. Yeah.
yeah, when it comes to her child, right? Yeah, there is going to be a great tragedy at the end of this, but I think the way she understands it and the way she learns to love it or love her time with her child is that, yeah, this is what's here. This is what you have to appreciate. I don't know if it quite gels with what I'm thinking in terms of the message of peace, but yeah, I guess tragedy it's going to be a big deal. We all experience it. I lost a family member this year too, and that feeling of grief is difficult to work through. And I honestly feel like I'm sort of going through that again with America and with our democracy. Like I have this great feeling of grief. And what will keep us going forward is the idea that, yeah, there's a lot to, there are probably a lot of great experience you've had with that person or someone you've lost. At the same time, when it comes to creating a better world, there are things you can look forward to, even if, in the short term, things are rough.